So she went outside to look at the roof. There was no one there, so she went back to bed. The noises continued. Eventually, they continued so much, and everyone in the house heard them, that they named this entity, whatever he was, Pete. They called him that. They gave him a name, yeah. But even though they never really felt threatened by the footsteps themselves, the house itself had a very negative energy. My grandmother, who was by no means a believer in this sort of thing, used to talk about how she'd see these little slinky, shadowy things move across the floor of the living room. And everyone was like, what do you mean? Like, do you mean rats? What are you talking about? And she's like, no, they're like shadows, and they move across the floor. And everyone was like, okay, they thought she was just making things up. But my grandmother was not the kind of person to make those things up. But as they spent more time in the house, and, obviously my mother was in college at this point, but, my aunt and uncle and my grandparents were still living in the house, they started to be affected by the house in an emotional way. My grandparents, who never used to argue, would start fighting really violently. Not physically, mind you, but they would, actually, I don't really know the details. My mother gets very pursed-lipped when she talks about it, but there was apparently some very bad familial stuff went on in the house while, this renovation was going on. It was affecting people's moods. My uncle apparently got very depressed and, wouldn't, talk to his parents anymore. And then my aunt, who had always been a happy, before, when they moved in the house, started getting really withdrawn. And at one point, she ran away from the house, which was not something, there was no reason for it. She just became really distraught, and she just decided to run away from the house one night. And they didn't find her for a while. And then, apparently they, had a pet, a dog, and they had this dog for forever. And it was in the winter, granted, but they let the dog out for like a couple minutes, and they went to get the dog back out because it was in the winter and you can't leave an animal out for very long. They went to get the dog again, and they couldn't find it anywhere. And the dog only ever went a couple feet from the door.
Right.
And they looked in the snow for the paw prints, and they said the paw prints looked as if the dog had been like walking around, pacing, and had kind of, walked around in circles for a little while like it was distraught, and then the paw prints just stopped at a certain point.
Wow.
And they didn't continue.
That's strange.
I know, and they never found that dog again. So.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's creepy. Poor dog. But
yeah.
I guess renovations really do upset a household, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. It's very strange. I mean, the fact that my dog, it'd be a little hard for that dog. She was like 150 pounds. She was in Newfoundland. It'd be hard for her to disappear, but she definitely did notice a lot of weird stuff that happened. She started to act up. Coincidentally, and it's very weird, I think they say that dogs have like a sixth sense sort of thing, like most animals do. And I think that there's definitely something to that, because my dog used to react when weird stuff started to happen. I don't know if I mentioned this to you before. They're called like mimics. It's basically like when you hear a voice but nobody's actually there, or it sounds like a family member. Either they call you on the phone and you start to talk to them, and then you realize, wait, who is this? And then they just hang up. So I'm sitting in, I guess when I was in like 8th grade. I was sitting in the dining room alone. I was home alone with my dog, and I hear a voice. Actually, like it sounds like one of my friends just like calling my name from the side of the house, and I'm thinking like, who walked into my backyard and went to that, the side of the house, like, who's there? It must be somebody walking around trying to get my attention. So I actually, like, go out there, open the door, and nobody's there. And then I just get this, like, eerie feeling, like, okay, because I heard my voice called out as clear as day. So I go in the house, and I just got this weird feeling, and my dog just starts to, like, bark violently or right around the area where I heard the voice. Like, I mean, she was, like, very upset. She usually doesn't get that worked up. So I just thought that they have some kind of sixth sense or something about this, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Wow, that's, and that's true. They always talk about how, children and animals are more sensitive to that sort of thing. Um, and, whenever you move those, children or animals into a new house, they're going to be upset. But it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess that's probably our hour.
Yeah.
We intended for this to be a 30-minute thing, but maybe with editing it will be.
Maybe.
And I guess join us next week when we do our paranormal discussion part 2, and we can talk about other paranormal activity like, chupacabra or Bigfoot or who knows what.
Extraterrestrial.
Extraterrestrials, one of Jared's favorite topics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he definitely has a lot to say on that subject. So see us next week. This was Eidolon, and we hope we hear from you again, or you hear from us, I guess.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, bye.